Good morning, everybody. Glad you could join us this morning to Zoom with Paty from Paty Matrai, Dr. Paty Matrai, who's down in Antarctica. And as you can tell, she's bundled up because it is very windy today. So we're going to give her an opportunity to tell us a little bit about where she is so she can then go inside and talk to us more where it's warmer. Good morning, Paty.
Hey, good morning. So, can everybody hear me? If you can hear me, just raise your hands. Come on, kids. Can you hear me? Can they hear me? Lisa? Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes, I see hands up. Do you hear us?
Oh, good. No, I don't see hands up, but that's all right. As long as you see them.
I do. They hear us.
Because it's going. Okay, there is a delay. So, good morning. I'm Paty Matrai. I'm an oceanographer. We are right now at Palmer Station in the West Antarctica Peninsula. When I'm home, I work at Bigelow Laboratory for Ocean Sciences in East Boothbay Harbor. I live in Newcastle, just around the corner. Okay. Today is a very, very windy day. We have sustained winds of about 25 to 35 knots, and it is supposed to be going up to 50 and 65 knots. So I will stay out here for as long as possible. But if you see me rushing, or you need, Lisa, you'll have to tell me. They warned me that there might be echo, just a lot of background noise. Okay, so you're gonna have to tell me because I won't hear it.
Okay.
They gave me a little bulb as a diffuser, but I already lost it in the wind. It's gone. It flew out somewhere. I don't know where. Yeah. So it's not very cold. It's actually, about 29, 30 Fahrenheit. And it has not been terribly cold, except yesterday when we're working out here, and I'll show you a little bit. So let me explain to you, because of the weather, what I think is going to happen within this hour. I'm going to show you outside where the station is and what surrounds it. Okay, and I will stay out here as long as I can. And then I will walk inside into the aquarium room and be there for a while talking to you. And if that, then, because that's a cold room, I may move to a different part, show you the lab or something like that. We'll have to play it by ear, okay? So, but when I move from the outside to the inside, I would like to stop for about 5 or 10 minutes so that the kids can ask questions then, instead of waiting all the way to the end, okay? Then we'll do a little bit, then we'll stop again in about 15 minutes so they can ask questions then, instead of me just talking nonstop, okay? All right, so right now, what you see is the glacier, which is behind Palmer Station. It is several, even though it looks just like a little pile of snow, the face from the ocean is several thousand feet high of ice. And that ice falls continuously. It means the glacier is calving all the time. It might even happen as we are talking today. Okay. As I move, you're going to see the bottom of the pole here at Palmer Station with, I have to tip this up, with a few, maybe the camera will focus, maybe it won't, with a few markers for some cities like Colorado, where the home base for the Antarctica program is. And now, where you see that black part, that's actually a little island, which is right in front of the glacier, but which only 5 years ago was part of the glacier. It was completely covered with ice, and there was no passage behind it. Now there is. That means that the glacier is melting, as many glaciers in Antarctica, especially in the peninsula, which is the little pointy bit that juts out from the Antarctic continent towards South America. And as I keep turning, you're going to start now seeing open ocean and in the background only islands, but you will also start to see parts of the station. And so what you see there right now in the back is the pump house. Very important because that's where all of the water for the station comes from. It's all desalinized salt water. The drinking water, the toilet water is actually salt water. The lab water, the science water, it's all salt water. 15 years ago, all of the water actually came from the glacier because the glacier was just right behind the station. But in the last 15 years, it has receded so much that they completely changed that. That's now you're seeing part of the building that holds the aquarium, and you see a deck. And maybe you see it. It's hard for me to tell because I only have a little tiny image. A blue box, and the back of a person who is working. That blue box, I'll get closer in a little while. I put my hands in my pockets because they're cold. Is the incubator where all of our experiments are happening. And even though we started an experiment last week, we had lots of mechanical difficulties yesterday, and we had to take it apart. This is what happens when you do science. You just always are constantly checking, and if you see something is not working, then you have to stop and fix it. When you are working in the field, there is nobody to call, so we have to fix it, which means half of what we brought in equipment is actually parts and tools and nose pliers and
Patty,
yeah.
it's getting very hard to hear
Yes.
you with the wind.
Okay, all right. Thank you for letting me know. So I'll just
That's better right now.
I walk in, yeah, but I've just turn it to myself. So I will pick up then the computer. So bear with me because it's going to be fuzzy for a little while as I move, okay? And I will have the laptop facing away from me. So you will only hear me, not see me, okay? You don't need to see me. So I am now walking. What you should see now is the main building of the station, the back of it. There are sleeping rooms, and you see part of the kitchen. Now I'm going down that walkway that I mentioned. You see pipes and fans that provide ventilation for the station, and then perhaps, yeah, here, that's the aquarium that we're working on. And there's Dr. Pete Conway and Carlton Rosenberg who are working on it. And I am now going into the aquarium. Whoa. Is that better?
Yes, no wind.
Yes. Okay. All right. So, I have to disrobe for a little while. Okay. It's
Much warmer inside than outside, I would imagine.
oh yeah, it is. Okay. So we are now inside of the aquarium. And so unfortunately, I won't be able to show you any wildlife with this. No, we've seen penguins. We've seen crab eater seals. and leopard seals, and we saw some dolphins on the way down, and several types of birds. Sheathbills, a few, and skuas, a few, and mostly seagulls. And in a day like today, with all this winds, it's actually really, really quiet, big animal wise. Okay, in this aquarium, there's a group from the University of Alabama who does diving, and they're looking at invertebrates. Just like when you go to the seashore in Maine, so they're studying the interaction between sea stars and chitons and things like that, and seaweed, because the seaweed puts out some chemicals that deter the grazing by these organisms. And so I'm going to stop now and let you ask me some questions, because then that will guide me on what I should talk about next. Okay, so you moderate this, Lisa, please.
I will do that. Okay, so I'm just going to go in the order I see schools on my screen. So I'll call one school at a time, and if you have a question, unmute your microphone and ask your question, and come up close and speak loudly so Patty can hear you. So Long Island, does anyone there have a question? Make sure you unmute your microphone first.
I wonder why you are doing the experiment in Antarctica and not in the lab in Alabama.
Excellent question. So first, I'm not in Alabama. That's a different group of people who are here. I'll take you to my lab at Bigelow in Maine in a little while. It's just that here in the aquarium, it's quieter. There are less people moving around, okay? So in our case, we are doing an experiment on bacteria and microalgae, and we are trying to understand how they talk to each other. We're doing it here in Antarctica because we're looking at a certain type of substrate or food that the phytoplankton put out that the bacteria consume. It's sort of like what happens in our gut. We eat, and then our stomach breaks down the food into things that the bacteria in our gut also can use and break down themselves. That activates all kinds of genes which are regulated by this interaction. That's the same thing that we're doing here in Antarctica. This compound is mainly produced in polar regions. And so we could either be working in Antarctica or in the Arctic, where I do most of my, the rest of my work. But Palmer Station is a very special place that has the logistics that allows us to do this experiment well. That's why we are here in Antarctica.
Great.
Good question.
All right. Searsport, do you have a question? Make sure you unmute your microphone if you do.
I'm going to take a minute to vet the questions in here because we have so many kids in one room. So you can just skip us, come back.
Okay. How about North Haven? Do you have a question?
How long are you staying in Antarctica?
I am staying until mid-May. So we left Maine on the 22nd of March. It took us, we flew from Portland to Charlotte to Miami, and then we flew to Chile. Then we took another flight within Chile and arrived in Punta Arenas, where we spent the night. And the following day, so that's 2 days, the following day we got on the ship and we left. And normally it takes 5 days sailing down the tip of South America, and then down the tip of Antarctica to get to the station. And during that period, you cross what's called the Drake Passage, which is known for really bad weather. And that's what we hit. And so it was so bad, so windy, and the waves so high that we had to come back and hide. Most of you will understand this, on the lee of Tierra del Fuego, in the tip of South America, for a day. So then the next day, we started again that night, and we encounter, again, really bad weather. So we had to come back and hide again. And so, and this is a pretty big ship. So we finally then crossed and made it to the station, but we were sort of already 2 days late. And so that was maybe March 31st. And we will be here through mid-May, and then a week to sail back again. So we should be home by Memorial Day weekend.
Great, thank you, Paty. How about Deer Isle? Do you have a question?
Yep, we do. How is your research important to people, and how does it help you?
Can you please repeat the question, because I heard, how is your research important, but I did not hear the second half of the question.
How does it help them? Help people? How does it help people?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, it's an excellent question. So this interaction between the algae and the bacteria, the algae make this compound. I'm going to say the full name, and then I won't repeat it again. It's called dimethylsulfonopropionate. We call it DMSP. They release that into the environment. The bacteria break it down and produce a gas called dimethyl sulfide. When this gas leaves the ocean into the air, which happens all over, happens in the Gulf of Maine as well, when sunlight hits it, it gets chemically photooxidized and it forms particles. And those particles are what allows water to condense and then form clouds. The more clouds we have, as we in Maine already very well know, they moderate the temperature of the planet. And so in a long way from what we're doing here in Antarctica, it has to do with cloud formation and controlling the heat of the planet. That's the other half of my research. And if there is time, that's what I will be working on at the end of the summer when I have a cruise to the Arctic. I'm done.
Okay, let me see. Searsport, did you have a question?
Have you kept a graph of what you see in Antarctica?
I couldn't hear that, Lisa. Can you please repeat?
Go ahead, try again, Searsport, a little louder.
Have you kept a graph of what you've seen in Antarctica?
Did you get that, Paty?
Have I kept something of what
graph.
I have seen?
Have you made a graph of what
a graph? No, yet. I don't have enough numbers yet to make a full graph. All I've been able to do is take the first time point. So effectively what would go on the 0 of your x-axis. And all I can tell you is that the concentration of DMS is extremely low, and the concentration of DMSP is measurable, but also low. And the biomass of microalgae is also low, but it means that there is life here and the potential for them to grow in our experiment. So in a week, I'll have 2 more data points, and then I can actually make a graph. That's a good question.
Would you like to take more questions, Paty?
It's up to them, really. It's much more important that they get their questions answered than me babbling away.
I have about a lineup of 7 kids here that have great questions.
Oh yeah. So let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, let's take a couple more from Searsport, and then I'll go backwards to the other schools.
How does the oil affect the wildlife?
I can't.
How does-
Lisa, can you repeat?
He's
Did
talking
you
about
ask-
the oil spills.
How does the oil spills affect the wildlife?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So first of all, the waters around Antarctica are protected. And so there should be no oil spills, zero. And so everything we do here is highly programmed. I'll give you an example. When we arrived, it was also the week of the exchange between the summer staff who are here for 6 to 8 months, and that's about 20 people, and the winter staff. The other 20 people, or up to 20 people, are scientists. Right now, we're about 32, 20 staff and about 12 scientists. The ship brought all the fuel for the station, for heating, for cooking, for what we're doing now, and electricity for the entire winter. So they connected a pipe from the ship to the pipe at the station. But before they could do that, there were booms placed in the water around the ship. There were absorbent paper and things like that placed under all of the pipe. There were groups of people that were programmed such that they would walk up and down the pipe, which is about half a mile of pipe, continuously, just looking for any drop of oil. Everything needs to be picked up, clean, and declared, written down, and it goes up to a higher authority, okay? So the bottom line, it should not happen, even if you're just transferring fuel for your Zodiac, for example. Everything needs to be clean and all that. So if it were to happen, it would be a mess. No different than Portland. Most of the benthic life would be affected. It would be like an oil spill in lots of other places, with perhaps two big differences. The colder it is, the quicker the oil will get mushy instead of liquid. But that means that the longer it would take to clean up and the longer it would take to degrade. I see here Dr. Dixon going, moving his head up and down. And fortunately, we have had very few oil spills in Antarctica. There is one major ship that went down. Meanwhile, we've had multiple unfortunate oil spills in the Arctic, where it can be just as cold and just as difficult to clean up. And there's a long series of studies that show how long it takes for oil to disappear, if ever, from polar regions. I'm done.
One more question from Searsport for now, and I'm going to go back to the other schools.
What's the most common Arctic animal you see?
You're going to have to say that louder, please, Searsport.
What's the most common Arctic animal you see?
What's the most common Arctic animal you see?
Okay. The most common Arctic animal that we see is microscopic zooplankton, but we use a microscope to see that. So big animals that we can see with our eyes right now, it's probably seagulls and seals. I think I've seen more seals than penguins at this time. Very different last year when we were here in the summertime, when probably the most common big animals were penguins. There were hundreds, thousands of penguins, lots of birds, lots of seals, lots of whales. I'm done.
All right, so let's go back to, let's go work backwards. Let's go to Dear Isle. Do you have another question you want to ask right now? Uh-oh, Dear Isle might have frozen. Here, you have frozen. Okay, you're unfrozen. Do you have a question you want to ask?
Say it again, Thomas. What's a zodiac?
Okay. A zodiac is a rubber motorboats. Just like they're everywhere in Maine, it happens to be one of the brands of these, rubber outboard with an outboard motor. I'll show you one in a little while when we walk around in the other direction. Okay.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay. North Haven, do you have another question now? Pass. Okay, thank you. Long Island, do you have another question now? Long Island looks like they might have frozen. Yeah, I'm not seeing motion at Long Island. So let's move forward, Patty. Do you have other stuff you want to tell us, or do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just move us then to another part of the station. Okay.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to be behind you. You won't see me, but you'll see it a little bit bumpy. All right. All right. So we're going outside of the aquarium, and this young lady is an investigator, soon to be working in the state of Washington. And we are now moving out of the aquarium into the vestibule where the labs are. And we're now coming into the lab areas and go and try to show you and answer the question about boats, because the wind, all the boats are out of the water right now. So I am now going out.
You've frozen, Patty. I don't know if you can hear us.
I'm gonna wait a little bit.
Yep, now we got you.
Okay. Yeah, because I've now changed from one repeater to a different repeater. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm gonna move this slowly around so you can see. So right now you're looking at the vans that have chemicals and gases. There is then boats. Right in front of us is our science boat. It's brand new. I'll have to move away for you to see a little bit more. And then there's lots and lots and lots of these containers, yeah, in the main building of the station. So I'm gonna move out. I am going to, Lisa, you'll have to tell me there is some equipment movement here. And so it might be too loud and you might not be able to hear me, but I need to close my jacket.
Okay, right now we hear you.
Okay. I just need to. Oh,
the wind is louder than the equipment.
Okay. Let's pick up this laptop. And I'll try to go away. So you can see the equipment and is dangling some sort of a container in this gray boat right there. That's a Zodiac. It's just a rubber boat with an outboard motor. Okay.
So the gray boat is the Zodiac.
Yeah, that gray boat is the Zodiac. There are lots and lots of those in Maine.
Patty, the wind is too strong. We can't hear you.
So then just watch for a second.
Okay. We'll watch. So it looks like you have quite a variety of vehicles, boats of all shapes and sizes, trucks and other heavy equipment.
Okay, we're going in, okay?
Sounds like a good idea.
We'll be quiet. All right. Here comes Sabrina. Just go. There we go.
Yes.
So what you see here, we are now indoors, and this is the lab that we're working in right now. We have lab benches. They give us refrigerators and freezers, and then we bring everything else that we need. You're seeing now lots of bottles and glasswares in which we're doing an experiment. Then I'll come around and come closer. This is, for example, what's called a gas chromatograph, so that we can measure these compounds. We spend a lot of time running samples through it. They give us computers, and I will then put this down somewhere so that, is this too noisy?
No, it's nice and quiet.
Oh, okay. There's a lot of background noise here. Stuff zooming and moaning and whatever, but if you don't hear it, then it's okay. Okay, all right. So what do we do when we're here? We first need to unpack everything. And we have 12 crates. Everything gets shipped from Maine to Los Angeles, and then by boat to Chile, where then it gets transferred into the boat that brings us. That's done. Oh, so we came in March, and we had to ship in November. So it means that we were packing in September and October. So you have to be prepared a long time ahead. Once you arrive on station, then you have to unpack everything and put it away in the space that they give you, or leave it in the boxes if you don't have room for it. Then once you have everything set up for your experiment, then we go out on those boats to collect the water that we need. That takes us about 3 hours to do that collection. And we will go out as many times as is necessary. When that water comes back in, then we prepare it, and some of it goes into that big blue box outside, some is sampled here, and then we sample every day. And we will do this until it's time to go, when at least a week in advance, we will have to take things apart, put them away, prepare lists of everything that is in each box, and then give them to the station, and the process reverses. Okay? Every group that comes here to Palmer Station has his or her or their project with a different question and a different approach. There are 2 other research groups here. One is doing this study on invertebrates and algae. They spend almost all of their time diving. They haven't arrived yet. They will arrive in 2 weeks. I'm done now, and I'm ready for your questions.
Okay. So, oh, my screen is shifted. I'm going to go in the order it's on my screen because it's just easier for me to keep track. So we've got another round of questions. I see hands in Searsport already. So Searsport, if you want to unmute your microphone and ask a question, go ahead.
Have you or your teammates got hurt while trying to do this?
Can you ask that one more time, Searsport?
Have you and your teammates gotten accidents
hurt or the weather?
Yeah.
Did you hear that, Paty?
Yes, I did. Yes, that's an excellent question. We do everything we can to prevent accidents. We prepare before we go on the boat. We dress accordingly. We talk through what we're going to do, who's going to do that, what, and in what order. This time, that is particularly important because we have an artist illustrator, and so she's not a scientist, and although she's been on boats, she's never done any of the things that we're doing science-wise. Because she came with us, she has to help us with the science. In other words, she's occupying a science spot. And another group has a photographer, and he had never been on a boat before he came with us. So we definitely have to go through everything with Frank. Accidents here happen mostly because of wind and resulting waves, and because of the glacier calving, so big chunks of ice falling into the water, which also cause waves if you're working close to shore. The third one is if you're unprepared for the cold. And the weather here changes really, really, really fast. When we came down, I talked about how rough the weather was. One person actually fell off their bunk and injured themselves. And that's a freakish accident. We don't prepare really for those when we're asleep. But there are 3 rescue teams here at the station. There is a water rescue team. Anything that happens to another boat, they would immediately jump on a special boat that they have that can deal with ice and go a little bit faster. There is a fire team, and there is a glacier or land rescue team. These are all of us. There are no special people here. So it means that whomever is going to be on those teams, one of the very first things they do when they reach the station is train on that and be trained by the outgoing team. So they've all been doing that already. Because of the bad weather, the ocean rescue team has done the least training, and they were programmed for today. Well, that's not going to happen. They are programmed for tomorrow, and that's not going to happen either. And so Wednesday, the winds are supposed to die down, and then after they're done with science, because that comes first, then they will go and do those trainings. It's taken very seriously. It's easy. It would be very easy to injure yourself. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to pop over to North Haven. Do you have any questions you want to ask right now?
What type of clothing do you have to wear?
Actually, we don't. Here at Palmer Station, okay, which is in the tip of the peninsula, in the summer, and even now, I'm not wearing anything that I wouldn't wear in Maine. I have, let me show you. Most of you will recognize these from home, right? Yeah, I'm sure lots of you or parents have. So I have one of those, the best one, and it is superb. Yeah. I have, and so everything is on layers. And right now I have 2 layers. I have a pair of flannel lined pants. Then I have another layer which sort of feather insulation, and then I had a pair of wind blocks, and I have a thermal shirt, and I have a vest, and then I had 2 jackets, and then I had another wind jacket. So it would be like, no, the jackets that you wear in the winter, we'll put 3 on top, one on top of the other. Yeah. But the worst one is the wind in your head. And so this is my most fashionable hat. It's a city hat. I have another one which has wind block, and you saw that I had. And so we do that. But the hardest thing to keep warm are your hands. And so that's where I spend the most money is on gloves. And we have everything from just rubber ones. Any of you who have a fish working parent will recognize these are just no rubber, and they're fuzzy on the inside, to diving gloves, but that's the one, because we're working with small things, you end up having to take everything off and then quickly put them on. So we use lots of those hand warmers, those, and they're inside our gloves and inside our pockets and in our boots. My children taught me this 20 years ago when they were young, that if you're really, really, really cold, you put one of those right here in your forehead under your hat, and it keeps your hand warm. So we just have lots of pairs of everything because everything gets wet. And so they have here lots of gloves and boot dryers. And you just, when I came, I thought, why did I bring so many clothes? But in reality, I probably get pairs of gloves one day, and it takes me an entire day to, and so the next day. That's what it is, just lots and lots of layers. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, let's go to Dear Isle. Do you have a question?
Right, Isaiah's going to talk now.
Are you on a boat or are you on land?
I am on, that's an excellent question. I am on land. The main difference between the Arctic Ocean and the Southern Ocean is that the Southern Ocean has this continent in the middle of it, Antarctica. So we are on land, and the station is on land, and the ship comes and goes. There's one ship that comes and goes between this station and Punta Arenas in the southern part of Chile. Very big ships cannot dock here, so you would have to do the transfer by smaller boats. I'm done. The Arctic has no land in the middle. And so when you do research in the Arctic, you're always on a boat, unless you are on the shore. Now I really am done.
Okay. Long Island, do you have a question you want to ask? I see a hand, so unmute your microphone and go ahead and ask.
Can regular people can regular people own property? Can regular people own property in Antarctica?
The answer is yes. Regular people can, if you can just afford the rather expensive passage. So you fly to South America. Most people fly to a small town called Ushuaia in the southern part of Argentina. And then once there, there's all kinds of types and sizes of vessels that will take people to Antarctica. It's usually about a week-long trip, and none of them are around right now. But in the summertime, when we were here last year for 2.5 months, we saw anything from really sleek sailboats with 3 people on board to absolutely giant cruise vessels with 2,000 people on board go by. A few were allowed to stop on the station, none that had more than 300 passengers. Those were pretty luxurious. I went for lunch and to give a talk in one of those. Yep, it was really fancy. So it's just a matter of cost, and it's expensive.
So,
But
can
lots and lots of people.
I think-
Anybody can do it.
So that's visiting. I think the question was, can people own property on Antarctica?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not hear that. No, nobody can own property in Antarctica. Antarctica is a shared good for humanity, and it is managed by the, let's call it the Antarctic Council. Many nations have stations in Antarctica. All the stations are for research. Some nations have military stations where they also do research. Chile, and you can look at it, I'm sure you can find a map. Chile and probably has the highest number of stations. The US Antarctic program has 3 stations. Palmer, where I am, McMurdo Station, which is the largest with about 1,000 people in the summertime, which is south of New Zealand. And then South Pole, which is smack in the middle, and which is the smallest station. It has about 20 people, and the hardest one to get to. You either fly there in the summertime, or you take these giant tractors from McMurdo then to South Pole. But the Koreans have 3 beautiful stations. The Chinese are building another stations. Actually, the UK also, England, has many stations. Beautiful ones, and one on the Weddell Sea, which is modular. So they had a crack in the ice there last summer. They closed the station, they picked it up, and they just moved it 2 miles down the road, and then unpacked the station and put it back on together. And next summer they will be working there. There's a small crew. So no private citizen can own land in Antarctica. I'm done.
Okay, great. Let's loop back. Are there any more? Raise your hand if there's more questions, and I'll do another round. Okay, Sears, I'll keep going in the same order. So I'll go back to Searsport. It looks like we still have questions. So Searsport, if you have a question, go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Hold on.
Is there any islands?
Are there islands
Are there?
near Antarctica? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, there are thousands of islands. We actually are on an island. It's called Anvers, Anvers Island, just off the mainland of the Antarctic continent. With, if it were sunny, you would see this gorgeous tall mountains. Lots and lots and lots of islands. Some of those islands are extremely protected because of the bird populations on them, and no one can set foot on them except with a very special permit for science. Even right here, right next to Palmer Station, there's 2 of those, and they are part of the Antarctic Marine Protected Area, AMPA. Yeah, so lots of them. Some of them you can just go and visit and spend and walk. And when the weather is good, we will do that just as a way of distracting and seeing something different, but not on the ones which are protected. I'm done.
Okay. North Haven, do you have another question you'd like to ask? Okay. Dear Isle, do you have another question you'd like to ask?
Wait. Can I say something to the North Haven kids?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yes.
So, all right. So I know that they've been working on monitoring temperature and salinity and light. And that's something that is done here all the time, continuously, winter and summer. Some of it are automated systems, and then people take samples once a week to calibrate. And I am going to, if I can find it, show them something that they are very familiar with, but I'm missing one part. I don't know where it went. Remember this guy? Yeah, so we've deployed some hobos, just like the ones that you deployed for your experiment, using using exactly the same thing to measure temperature and light inside our incubators. So I've been thinking about you guys. That's why I wanted to say this. I'm done.
Okay, great, thanks. So now let's go back to Deer Island. Did you have a question?
Yes, we do. Justin.
Do you just have animals in the aquarium, or do you have bacteria?
What do you keep in the aquarium? What's in the tanks?
So the other project keeps seaweed, so macroalgae, kelp, different types, some of those really red ones which are very thin threads. And then they keep bigger organisms that will eat them. So chitons, all kinds of snails, sea stars. Those are the things that I have seen in their big tanks. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Long Island, do you have another question you want to ask right now? Nope. Okay. So we have about 10 minutes. Did you want to share any other information, Patty, before we do more questions, or just move more questions?
Yeah. Community.
North Haven Community.
North Haven Community School. Turn it around, Laura.
It's backwards in our camera. But
We had one question. If we could.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, of course.
How would you say the difference in your research varies from the island you have in Maine and in Antarctica?
Excellent question. So let's put it this way. Even in the summertime, the air temperature and the water temperature in Antarctica will be what the air temperature and the water temperature are in Maine in the wintertime. In the wintertime in Antarctica, it will only get colder and darker. So if you're a plant, that means most likely an animal is that you will grow slower. Yeah. And if you're an animal, you will also grow slower. And what people have documented over the last 50 years is that you will grow larger as well. So there is a very large diversity of organisms around Antarctica in some places. Sometimes how many they are is extremely high. For example, lots of boats still come down to fish for krill, which is an organism like a zooplankton, which is very common in polar regions from which certain fish depend. So the organisms are not the same. They're not the same species as in the Gulf of Maine. And they are adapted to lower temperatures and lower light levels. I'm done.
Okay, great. Did you have any more information, Patty, that you wanted to share, or do you just want them to keep asking questions?
So no, based on previous experiences, the questions now tend to vary from the science to the living conditions. So I could go upstairs and show you what, the kitchen and all those regions where we eat a little bit.
Looks like you have a thumbs up from Long Island. Do other people want to see that stuff? Yep, they want to see it.
Yeah. All right. So again, it means that I will be moving around a little bit until I stopped. And then once I showed you the kitchen and all of those things, then I will move somewhere where it's quiet or come down here to talk and take questions, okay?
Okay.
Right, so again, I'm gonna be behind the computer, okay? So we're now leaving the lab area where we are and walking outside. This entire hallway is nothing but labs, okay? And now so you can see how many, I don't know, how important hand warmers and toe warmers are there. They're boxes and boxes. And you can also see the fire extinguisher. They're everywhere and everybody needs to know where they are. So now we're going upstairs and there's half an hour until lunch, so it should be pretty deserted. Okay. So we are now, I'll speak a little bit quieter. Please tell me if you can't hear me, okay? We are now in the lounge and the people who were outside who are just warming up. So this is where we eat, moving slowly. And now you're facing the kitchen. And there are two people here who cook for us. One does breakfast and lunch, and the other one does dinner. Yeah, and you can see that. And there's no juice, and then those drawers have cereals, and then you have spoons and whatever it is. Here is one of the most important parts of the kitchen, which is the coffee and hot water part. And then there is no janitorial service here. So we all do our own dishes. And so there's a whole section, which is what I hope that you're seeing. Yeah,
Yes, we are.
Is where we do our dishes. So anybody who uses anything, and after every meal, people come and put their dishes. And then we have this big sanitizer, which whenever somebody goes by and you see it that it's down, then you move it and you move the clean dishes to the left and you move the dirty dishes into it and wash it. Next person who goes by will then put them away. Yeah, so now I'll show you the back. And here's Casey. No, this is Kirsten who's cooking. See, we won't bother her. She is an awesome cook. And here is the pantry. Yeah, with all kinds of dry goods. Remember, you're feeding 20 to 40 people for months and months at a time. So if the ship couldn't come down with new food, once every 6 months they bring just everything. And most of these food comes from the US. Here's somebody else who just did another load of dishes of some sort. And one of the things that they're known for is they're always making cookies. They're always making cookies of some sort or another. And they try to have what people like, peanut butter and jelly and things like that. Now I'm going down the hallway, and this is all offices. This is the administrative staff, the IT guy, people, the communications people, the science people. The office is empty, so I'm just gonna walk in to the office, use it to keep talking. So now you're looking out the window of what's called the science office. And so all of the senior scientists share this office. It just has desks, just nothing fancy about it. Yeah. So I'm going to put the computer again up somewhere so that you can see me, and then we can do questions. All right? Okay.
Okay. Ready for more questions?
Yeah, I'll stay like that because if not, you can't see me. All right.
Okay.
Questions?
Searsport, do you have any final questions?
I think she answered all ours. We're great.
Okay. How about North Haven? Do you have any final questions for Paty?
Okay.
How is Antarctica different than Maine?
First, there are no people here. Other than the people at this station and at the very few stations around, there are no people in Antarctica. And hence, there are no power lines, there's no running water. It's like if you went into the woods in Maine. Maybe, there we go, we're just in focus somewhere in there. So it's isolated, it's remote, it's cold, and it's protected everywhere. So you need to, there's no dumping of trash nor anything else. And so that only implies that you need to be very self-sufficient as a group. And so each country is responsible for the area that they occupy. The closest two research stations to us, there is a Ukrainian station called Vernadsky. It's about 20 miles from here. And then there is a large British station, Rothra. And so they would be actually Rothra, because the Ukrainian station is very, very small and they don't have very many resources. Rothra would be the one closest if we had some major thing. They have a plane that can go from Rothra all the way to the tip of the Antarctic peninsula for emergencies, really. But because there's no place to land here in Palmer Station, we can't really use that plane in the sense of helping each other. Other than that, nobody has a boat big enough to go between stations on a regular basis. Those are the major differences. Oh, and of course, it's covered with snow and ice. What am I saying? No, it's covered with glaciers and snow all the time, except for the little bits of rock that are exposed for a little while in the summertime. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Dear Isle, do you have a last question you'd like to ask?
Bacteria spread into Maine water.
Do we have the bacteria you're studying in Maine water?
We have some, but not exactly the same. From last year, we looked and compared. This is the results that we presented at our one large ocean science meeting that happens once a year somewhere. And the only other place that shows bacteria like the ones which are in our experiments was a sample collected north of Svalbard. And so that's in the Arctic, actually. So that suggests that these are specific to polar waters, let's put it that way. Yeah, there aren't that many samples that have been analyzed in the way that we're doing. Just our sampling of last year produced several thousand examples of bacteria, which we didn't have before. Nobody had before. I'm done.
Okay. And
I
Long
can
Island.
see some schools going.
Yes. Long Island, do you have a final question?
We don't have a question, but we just wanted to say
Thank you.
we got to sign off. Have a great day.
Bye, Long Island.
Well,
Thanks
you
for
too.
joining.
Thanks for being
Bye, Dear
here.
Isle.
Bye.
All right. So if Paty can probably take a few more questions if Searsport or North Haven have any. Does
Deer Island's
Searsport? Bye, Deer Island. Searsport, you said you were all set with questions, Searsport, correct?
Yeah. Why don't we say thank you too, and we'll sign
Okay.
off too. Everybody,
All right.
ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Bye, Searsport. Good to see you.
Last ones.
North
Okay.
Haven, do you have anything?
Well, we just want to say
Thank you.
so. Thank you very much, and good research.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Take
Bye,
care,
North
kids.
Haven.
See ya.
Okay.